Hookah laka maka, come on, I want a tutty. Carolina Panthers subverted everyone's expectations. We all thought the Panthers would go defense, got to get to that quarterback, got to get some sacks, but no, that's not what the Carolina Panthers did. They zigged when everybody thought they were going to zag, and they go wide receiver Teteroa McMillan at number 8, Carolina Panthers. I'm not sure that this color blue really goes with the Hawaiian shirt, but they go with the Hawaiian wide receiver, Tet McMillan out of Arizona. Your first round pick if you're a Carolina Panthers fan. Welcome into Wire to Wire with just Diesel today. No Cole Bryson. He is out taking care of some family business. He's got a good family fun event to go to tomorrow, so he's just headed out the door a little bit early, kind of playing hooky on a Friday so that he can be a part of this great celebratory family event. But Cole is going to be back with us on Monday. How are we doing in our 1-2 pick at each position group challenge? Well, I think I'm doing pretty well. To be honest, it's hard to say, and we had to differ a little bit here and there on who we thought would go number 2. We're pretty consistent on who would be the number 1 pick at each position group, but the number 2 turned out to be a lot more difficult to predict. So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. At 3:20, I'll be joined by Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Had a great conversation with him earlier at his availability, so I'm going to replay that for you coming up at 3:20. The best players still available on the board, position by position at 3:45. At 4 o'clock, a fantastic NFL mind, Ross Tucker, an Odyssey insider, going to join me right here on the Fan Upstate. And of course, Tolos, I have you all show long. Today is your day, Tolos, to shine. What do you think about what you saw last night in the NFL draft's opening round? Tonight, we'll get rounds 2 and 3 kicking off at 8 o'clock, and then we'll have rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 tomorrow. Kind of the mop-up duty guys, the guys that they can provide you some decent depth. There's a good chance they make the team, but really, outside of the 4th round, what's the point? I'd rather be an undrafted free agent right after that. Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Stream already buzzing. How about that? 41 Tolos already watching the stream. JD says, Tolo, and I hate the Panthers. Why, JD? I don't know. To be honest, JD, I'm not sure who your NFL team is. I don't know if you hate the Panthers because you liked the pick and you wanted him for your team, or you just say, I hate the Panthers. Let's see here. JD says Cole takes more time off than teams who passed on Shedeur. Ooh, teams passing on Shedeur Sanders. Now that is an interesting way to start the show. Shedeur Sanders, you got your jersey number retired. You had all this hype around you, and then like Wile E. Coyote, chasing after the Roadrunner, falling off a cliff. Nobody taking Shedeur Sanders. Embarrassing, if you ask me. Not embarrassing that he fell to the 2nd round. That's not really something to be embarrassed about. He's going to get picked today, right? He's going to get picked today. That's not a shocker for anybody. But the fact that you had this little special pod with your branding all on the inside of it. You had that rack there with all 32 NFL team hats, and nobody called your name. Then you had to get up and, not apologize, but it's kind of a mea culpa to all the people who were there around Shedeur saying, guys, we're going to get him tomorrow. This is what Shedeur Sanders had to say when he addressed his camp immediately after the 1st round ended.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
Ooh. You feel for him getting all dressed up with nobody called him to dance. Shedeur not picked in the 1st round. A lot of people expected him to go 21 to the Steelers. There was another team or two that might have taken a flyer on him. Man, but this is why draft conversation is so fun and frustrating at the same time. You know, you hear all these rumors, you hear all these mock drafts, people thinking they know what the hell it is they're talking about, and then it gets blown up in the first hour of the NFL draft. Turns out you knew nothing all along. You knew nothing. Shedeur Sanders was like as high as like 4 and 5 at some point, and then he falls all the way out of the first round. You felt a little bad for him, though. You did, because he had all this hype around him. He had all this rigmarole around him at his draft day, and nobody called him. Travis Hunter and the Cleveland trading back so that the Jaguars could trade up to number 2. That was the first major ripple of the day. It's crazy how that happened. Cam Ward going number 1, that wasn't a surprise to anybody. We all knew it was coming. We knew it was coming months ago. But the Jaguars trading up, giving up quite a bit. I mean, it wasn't like the most expensive trade up ever. They did give up a first-round pick next year. That's really what they're losing, right? They traded up from 5 to 2, and then they gave up their first-round pick next year to go get a guy who can be elite on either side of the ball. And teams use their first-round draft picks on receivers all the time. Teams use their first-round draft picks on elite corners all the time. I don't see it as a big deal. I think Travis Hunter is one of the most complete prospects we've seen in the NFL in a long time. And guess what? If it doesn't work out playing defense, he's only one of the best wide receivers we've seen come out of college in a couple of years. And if it doesn't work out on offense, guess what? He's a lockdown corner, and those guys get paid too. So the Jags, they gave up a first-round pick for next year. Outside of that, I think it's a great pick. I think it's a great pick. JD says, I'm a Panthers fan, and I hate the pick. We're going to get into that a little bit later on in this very segment, JD. I didn't expect them to pick wide receiver here. I was thinking defense too, but I don't hate the pick. He says Hunter is going to play more offense than defense, the Jaguars said. We'll see. We'll see how they end up using him. What teams say at this point is essentially meaningless. It's bunk, right? They don't know. They haven't put these guys through practices. They haven't put these guys through workouts. They haven't installed any offense in their brains. They don't know. They can have an intention. They can have a thought process of what they would like to do with them, but they don't know at this point. So, it's going to be fun to see how he gets utilized. Shout out to him, and man, what a bullet he dodged, right? Because he could have spent the first 4 years of his career in Cleveland. Cold ass, nasty ass, dirty ass Cleveland, full of Ohioans. That's what they call themselves, right? Ohioans. Or you get to go down to Jacksonville, and you get to be in beautiful sunny skies, beautiful weather all the time. Ladies walking around Jack's Beach. Come on, where would you rather be? Plus, it's closer to his hometown. Madcraft says, Miami shine. Okay, Madcraft, what do you mean by Miami shine? Tolos, you can text in on the Hub City Spartan Burgers text line, 844-326-3663. You can also comment on the stream, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. Subscribe, follow, like. If you haven't done that yet, make sure that you are, on the team. We'd love for you to do that first and then jump into the stream and start chatting it up. I want to see some Tolos who we've never seen comment before jump in there. We love seeing JD and Madcraft and Dan B and Stephen Webb and all the Tolos that jump into the stream every day. But I want to start seeing some of you Tolos who watch the stream but don't comment very often. I want to get your thoughts. Jersey Joe says, let's all shine. Hopefully I'll be shining tomorrow at the Italian American Festival and winning the pasta eating contest. Joe, tell me more about that because I want to go. I love pasta. Let's see here. Texter says King Tet. He texted that into Rob's show. I like King Tet. I do that. I do like King Tet. I just want to know who's going to be the first media member to not know their history and call him the Tet offensive. Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. It's going to be damn disrespectful to those men and women who served in Vietnam and lost their lives that day, but somebody's going to do it. King Tet, I like that one a lot. Bubba Brooks, 86, says, guess Dion should have asked LBJ for advice to get his son where he wanted. Texter says, Sanders has no one to blame but himself and his daddy acting like a clown. That comes from Dewey. Dewey's an interesting cat, right? We had some conversation about Dewey yesterday, and I don't know if Dewey was listening. I'm sure he was, because I don't think he's allowed to drive, so he probably is just sitting there listening to a radio all day. But Dewey, I think, is starting to let the mask slip just a little bit. Either Dewey really is one of those on the spectrum Tolos, or Dewey is actually a very smart guy. A very smart guy who plays dumb, because over the last couple of weeks, I think Dewey is tired of kind of making the same old everybody sucks, everybody should be fired takes. And he's calling in with some heat, right? He's texting in with some real takes. And I like that about Dewey. I like that. He's letting the mask slip just a little bit. But the Carolina Panthers going 8 with Teteroa McMillan. I'm wearing the Hawaiian shirt today just for Tet McMillan. I'm excited about the pick. You know why? Because the Carolina Panthers have watched the Tampa Bay Buccaneers victimize them and victimize the division with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for a couple of years now. And they said no more. They said no more. We are not going to let another team in our division who needs wide receiver, and the Buccaneers did go wide receiver with Egbuka at 19. We are not going to let the Buccaneers get another 6'5" burner and torch us for the next 4 to 5 seasons or 10 seasons or whatever it may be. See, I think that was Dan Morgan's thought process. Maybe it was a Dave Tepper flew in at the last minute and said, you better take that guy. You better get Bryce Young some more guys. Maybe Bryce Young stinks it up again this year. You know, maybe the last 4 or 5 games of the 2024 season was all smoke and mirrors. Maybe none of it was real. At that point, you got XL, you got Tet, and if you go quarterback next year where the draft is potentially a lot better, you sit Bryce Young. I'm just saying, maybe they're building for a future that can insulate whether or not Bryce Young is good. Because if you got no wide receivers and you're calling upon Andy Dalton, at that point, he'll be like 80. You're starting over from scratch. You really don't have a whole lot. I don't think XL is wide receiver 1 for the Carolina Panthers. I think he's a really good number 2. And I think XL with Tet put together makes a really formidable wide receiver room over the next couple of seasons. But I tweeted this last night at Diesel on Radio. Make sure you follow at Diesel on Radio, at the Fan Upstate, and at the Cole Bryson. So I don't think the Carolina Panthers are ever going to get another sack. I don't think they're ever going to sack the quarterback ever again, because we just kept watching elite edge off the board. For God's sakes, the Falcons, they're like playing fantasy football where all they have are defensive ends and quarterback sacks. The Falcons got so good off the edge and just building some crazy depth there. But the Carolina Panthers, I think, are going to set themselves up to score a lot of points. I talked about it a lot last season, frustrated that this team was good for basically a touchdown and a field goal week in and week out. I think they got tired of that. They don't want to have that happen anymore. They want to go out there and outscore teams. They want to be an offense-first brand of football, putting up 28 points. See if you can keep up with us. Now, we'll see what they do with their second-round pick. We'll see what happens when they go on the clock tonight. But wide receiver was a need. It was a need. I don't think you were going to get anybody anywhere approaching a first-round pick in an Egbuka style of guy or a Tet style of guy. That kind of height, that kind of speed, that kind of explosiveness, that kind of polished route running later in the draft. You got the guy sitting right there. Quit messing around. Go get somebody who can be a legitimate weapon for Bryce Young or whoever the quarterback may be in the future if Bryce Young doesn't pan out again in 2025. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Bryce is going to be better this year. But then again, development is never linear. Like that Paula Abdul song. I talk about it all the time. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We never know if Bryce Young could be that guy again next year. Stephen Webb says, Diesel, Bryce was working with King Tet in the offseason. Maybe Bryce is stepping into the leader role. Interesting. A lot of messages coming through. Wrestling is awesome. That's his words, not mine. Says, who is the number 2 of Wire to Wire? Madcrest says, not sure. Just know I'm number 1. You know, I forget who sang that song. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. But gangsters don't flex because gangsters know they got them. Okay? The Madcraft is all flex. It's all flex. Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. JD says Cole skips work too much. Tolos, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting to the stream and the text messages. Texter says, how about the Eagles pick? We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Coming up in the next segment, of course, Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, going to join me. But again, I love the pick. Is it where I would have gone? No. I would have gone end. I would have gone pass rusher. But I guess they feel like, as they get into the second round, that maybe Mike Green, Donovan Ezaruka, has the potential to be just as good as Jalen Walker, as some of the other ends that were taken in the first round. I'm really high on this Boston College kid. I've heard a lot of people saying really good things about Donovan Ezaruko. Excited to see if that's going to be the pick in the second round. When we come back, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered talked about a lot of different things with Chris Phillips. He is on the road at at LSU as they're facing Tennessee. Talked to Chris about this stuff with Arkansas's athletic director, essentially calling open season on recruits who leave before their NIL deals are complete, before the terms are complete. All that with Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered on the way next. 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, and on the free Odyssey app wherever you go. hear him all football season long and occasionally through college baseball season because he is just growing into the absolute best when it comes to covering SEC baseball. Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered joins us now on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Chris, I saw you posting up some video last week from the Cajun Cafe at Clemson, and I also saw that a handful of the Baton Rouge and LSU faithful took a little issue with that, took a little umbrage with that. So are your mentions still being lit up by Cajun fans speaking to you in tongues, using curse words at Clemson?
Yeah, Diesel, first things first, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, that post was really interesting. It had multiple layers to it, right? You had some Clemson folks that were excited to see me there, some not so excited to see me there. You had trash talk because the ACC was beating up on the SEC, of course, because Clemson wins that game. And like you mentioned, yeah, there were a lot of LSU following, if you will, a lot of fans of ours that are LSU fans that were quite confused by the Cajun Cafe there in the upstate. They said I saw one comment that I thought was pretty funny. They said it'd be like if Alex Box Stadium had an Outer Banks Cafe, which actually made me laugh a little bit. But even had some Louisiana Lafayette fans chiming in that were taking some offense. So no, listen, it's all in good fun. I will say shout out to all those in the Cajun Cafe. It's my second time being out there. Was out there last summer, and obviously went to the game this past week to go watch Georgia play. And those folks out there in the Cajun Cafe have treated me great. You know, obviously it's a really tough ticket to get, and thankfully with the credentials we get, we're able to jump up there, and they always take care of us. But yeah, the mentions were really funny. Like I said, Diesel, that post had multiple layers to it that I got a good laugh out of.
It's the best when you could upset like 5 different groups of people at the same time, not necessarily even at you, but that gets LSU and like you were saying, Lafayette fans and LSU fans all at each other's throats, man. I think you just tapped into something really special there. So you were telling me that you're down in Baton Rouge right now for the Tennessee LSU series. I imagine you're expecting some fireworks in this one.
Yeah, Diesel, it's going to be a great weekend. Obviously you could argue it's the best slate we've had in the SEC to this point, with obviously what's going down in Austin with Texas and Texas A&M, and obviously the series that I'm at here at Alex Box Stadium with LSU and Tennessee. And this was one, man, before the season. I had this circled, felt like this was probably going to be the series of the season. And when Texas A&M struggled early on, it only reconfirmed that I knew I was coming to this one. It was my first time ever taking in Alex Box Stadium. Any rankings you see, stadium rankings, atmosphere rankings when it comes to college baseball, Alex Box is near the top or not at the top. I'm fully expecting a super regional type of atmosphere. And if you look on social media, Diesel, it's like, I don't know if I'm ready to call LSU Tennessee like a full-fledged baseball rivalry by any means, but the fan bases on social media certainly treat it this way. And I think it's because it's kind of this new blood versus blue blood sort of mentality where you've got LSU. I mean, they're the kings of the sport, essentially. They've been around forever. What they did under Skip Bertman, then Paul Maneri, then what they're doing under Jay Johnson. It's very well documented, right? LSU and College World Series and national titles, they go hand in hand. But now you've got Tennessee, right? The reigning national champions, and they sort of feel like with Tony Vitello, they're running the sport. They're the new kid on the block, if you will. And I don't think LSU folks love that, to say the least. So it's going to be a lot of fun, Diesel, in regards to the series, man. I think it's 2 teams that are really desperate right now for a big series win. Tennessee has lost 2 of their last 3 series, including last weekend in Kentucky. LSU won 2 of 3 against Alabama last weekend, but the weekend prior, they got swept by Auburn. They just got run ruled in the midweek by Northwestern State. So they're not feeling great about where their team is at right now, right? Like, they're really antsy. And both of these teams fighting for a top 8 national seed. Pick any storyline you want, Diesel. It is going to be pure cinema this weekend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I just can't wait to take it all in firsthand.
And every baseball coach in America wants those type of tough environments right now. You need to be tested like that down the stretch. Clemson hadn't really been tested that much over the past couple of weeks, and they, took a 14-4 loss yesterday on the road at NC State, a good NC State, top 25 NC State team, but they need those kind of environments right now at this point in the season. Tell me about this seafood restaurant that you were at. It's called Paraines, I think. How adventurous of an eater are you while you're out on the road? And I ask that because my co-host eats Chick-fil-A fries and Chick-fil-A sauce and calls it gourmet. He won't eat sushi, even if it's cooked. Please tell me you go outside of the deep fried section when you're tasting all these menus from all over SEC country.
Oh, Diesel, for sure, man. And we got to get, by the way, Cole right. That is a shame that a South Carolina man, because I'm just thinking about, listen, I was just down the week prior, Diesel, down in Hilton Head, had some soft shell crab and swordfish and all kinds of stuff. I love seafood. Really a lover of all food. I mean, I would try anything nearly. So yeah, so it's Pyran's, and it's one of the best spots here in Baton Rouge. I mean, certainly the menu is as adventurous as you would like to get. Actually, when I was here with the football season, I had crawfish etouffee, which was one of the best things to ever hit my taste buds. Last night I had more of a just like a traditional seafood dish, if you will, but had boudin balls for the appetizer. Phenomenal. We are going to get, Diesel, I'm really excited about, we're vlogging the whole weekend. Yes, I'm excited to take in the baseball series, but one of the things I'm most excited for, I'm going to have my first boiled crawfish experience. If you can believe that or not, I've never actually had boiled crawfish. So, I've had crawfish. I had it in the crawfish etouffee, but I've never had it like the traditional boil it, crack it, suck the head, all that good stuff. Never done any of that. So I will be having my first experience either today or tomorrow. I know there's a big tailgate that a former LSU baseball player is throwing, and they will have boiled crawfish out there. So, really excited. Listen, I'm adventurous when it comes to the food. I'll try virtually anything. I can't think of many things that I won't at least give a shot. I love seafood. So I've been spoiled over the last few weeks being on the coast of South Carolina and now being down here in the bayou. So it's, I'll tell you this too, the food, because I've toured the SEC obviously to a great extent at this point, the food in Louisiana as a whole, Diesel, it's just undefeated.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they say down here, you're not fat, you're well fed, and the food isn't hot. It's just well seasoned. So yeah, it is, the food here is next level.
I have this theory, Chris, that the best food comes from the poorest areas, right? The people that had to take the leftovers that nobody else wanted and figure out a way to make it delicious. That's where the absolute best food comes from. It can't be topped because it takes the effort and it takes the love to coax all the flavor out of those things.
Yeah. No, it's, again, and by the way, I want to give a shout out that I remember now. The Pontchartrain is what I had last night. Incredible dish if you ever go to Pyran. But yeah, no, I would agree with you, Diesel. They get really creative with it. Like I said, the seasoning. I'll go as far as to say this. After I left Baton Rouge the last time, I bought a couple different seasonings that I now put on like everything when I'm making chicken, fish. I put it on my eggs. I'm fully bought into the culture down here when it comes to the food side of things. So yeah, I'm telling you, man, the food is undefeated.
Yeah, Chris, a Pontchartrain sounds like a 3-foot-long hot dog that would be for sale inside of LSU's football stadium, or that's an opportunity missed. That sounds like a great name for one of those gigantic meals that you're only going to get in one location. Let's jump over to the football side of things, Chris. I want to get your reaction to Arkansas's athletic director backing their Edge NIL collective in pursuing buyouts from players. Like, I think in theory, it sounds like a great idea and it sounds like a win for college football. But if only 1 or 2 schools are doing this, starting to go after players that are leaving before their term is up, then, won't it just be used against them in recruiting? Couldn't Lane Kiffin say, hey, don't go to Arkansas because their athletic director is going to come after you for money?
Diesel, I support Hunter Yurachek when it comes to the idea of buyouts in college football. There has to be some sort of protection for the universities, the head coaches, the schools themselves. And I think college football needed this Iamaleava situation to happen from the standpoint of it blowing up in Nico's face. There being some backlash of Madden just all of a sudden leaving Arkansas for UCLA. And I'm going to play devil's advocate for you here, Diesel, because you mentioned, could it be used against Arkansas in recruiting? Here's why I don't think so. I think if you could talk to these coaches behind closed doors and you had an open, honest conversation with them, they would tell you this is what they want. They want some sort of structure like this in place where, again, there is protection for them. Guys can't just up and leave and, take the money and run, what have you. So, and these are coaches that I've talked to, by the way, across multiple sports that have mentioned they have vented their frustrations over NIL and, what it's done to college athletics, what it's doing to their rosters. So, no, listen, I think it's a good thing for college football. We need more structure. It has been the wild, wild west for too long. We needed something radical to incur some change, and it feels like we've finally gotten that to a degree. I think the buyout thing, listen, it works in every other, situation, whether it's pro sports, it's these coaches, right? When they leave for a job, they got to pay a buyout. Diesel, I can tell you right now, there's already SEC schools that are fining kids. Fines have already been put in place. Money is being taken away from these athletes to a degree. You're right. There's probably going to be some litigation, some back and forth, some fighting, if you will, because, I don't think it'll happen easily. But, yeah, I'm all for what Hunter Yurichek's pushing for. And, again, I think the university, they need some protection of this. You can't just be handing out money and expect nothing in return, and guys can just leave freely. And, again, they can take the money and run. So I'm all for more structure in college football. I think it'll make the sport more likable, and I think fans will have more understanding of what is going on and not feel like they're just kind of, just riding the wave of the next guy entering the portal and taking the bag.
Yeah, Chris, I completely agree with you. I think it's necessary, and I think this whole Nico Iamaleava story is the first real market correction in this NIL era. I just wonder how enforceable things like this are if each school gets to decide whether or not they want to enforce their buyouts, and it's not coming from the conference where every school is mandated / allowed to pursue getting money back from these guys. So back to that Nico story, and we've all talked about that till we're blue in the face. I just wonder from you, do you believe that Josh Heupel can turn Joey Aguilar into a starter for Tennessee this year? Does Joey Aguilar start a game at Tennessee?
I think he will start a game, Diesel. I think you brought him in to compete for that starting job, and I don't think you bring him in unless you feel like he can be your starter. What's unique, Diesel, you and I have a very unique vantage point because we've probably watched as much App State football as anybody else out there. If anybody can get the most out of Joey Aguilar and at least bring him to at minimum equal to the production Nico gave them last year, I think it is Josh Heupel. Very quarterback-friendly system, quarterback-friendly scheme. I think especially if Joey's able to get in there, grasp the offensive system. You and I both know, right? He's a gunslinger. He's a warrior out there. You never question his want to or toughness or leadership or what have you. But you and I also watched him, Diesel, and I thought he was an average Sun Belt quarterback. I did. I was at the game, and it's one game, right? I don't want to judge him completely off one game, but, I was at the game last year against South Alabama where he made some throws that just,
head scratchers.
Just
yeah.
awful throws. And again, that was one game. He's played great football, but I tell you this, the one thing he has to do is cut down on the turnovers. 14 interceptions, I believe it was last year, and that's against Sun Belt defenses. And all due respect to the level of football in the Sun Belt, this is the SEC. It is going to be a completely different beast now. So, listen, I think with his athleticism, I think with Josh Heupel and his offensive mind and what they do offensively is so unique. And from what I was told, Diesel, Nico Iamaleava actually struggled to grasp the offense as a whole, which is one of the reasons why he actually struggled. That's something behind the scenes nobody really knew about. I think if Joey can come in again, pick it up quickly, he'll have a chance at great success. But to say the least, Diesel, and I voiced this on social media, I was skeptical of the pickup. And again, I wish Joey went with the best. Put on for App State, but I don't know, man. I just, unless he makes a major leap, Diesel, like if he just is who he's been, who we've watched, I think he's a bottom third of the league quarterback in the SEC, and I don't even think that's a hot take.
Now, I wonder how much, knowing that he was losing his coaching staff as the Sean Clark era was coming to a really sad close at App State. I wonder how much of that kind of worked its way into his psyche and changed the way he played, because he's a guy who could play up to a scenario where there was that road game in 2023 at North Carolina where he was magical in the overtime scenarios, but he also stunk it up really bad against Clemson last year in a 66-20 loss. So he also stunk it up to schools like South Alabama. And if you fancy yourself a good program, a great program in your conference, you just can't let that happen. Chris, how did you take in the draft last night? You're on the road. You're in Baton Rouge. Were you in a hotel room? Were you watching it at the bar at your restaurant? How were you taking in the draft?
Yeah, so we had it on at the restaurant, Pyrans, with TVs all over the place. So that was great. And then we also hopped to another place after that, and they had it on in Ivar's. Shout out to Ivar's, great bar down in Baton Rouge. So, yeah, I was able to watch it. I was funny enough, man. I was obviously being down here. I was with a few Saints fans, and they were less than pleased with their selection. Obviously, an offensive tackle, I believe it was, at the number 9 spot. But I don't know if I've mentioned this to you yet, Diesel, or maybe I'm sure many of your audience does not know, although we've publicized it, on our socials and everything else. SEC Unfiltered, yours truly, will be relocating to Nashville, Tennessee, actually end of next month. Going to be making that move. So I was very intrigued by the Titans at number 1 selecting Cam Ward. So if you see me rocking a Cam Ward jersey over the next few months, mind your own business. No, I'm just kidding. I was intrigued by Cam Ward going 1. Obviously, I think the big storyline of night number 1, no Shedeur Sanders in the first round. I know everybody's so devastated by that. Couple big-time SEC guys. I was a little surprised that Nicky Manwari didn't go, for all the South Carolina folks out there, especially with the year he had last season. I mean, he was one of the best safeties in the league. I understood Malachi Starks going over him, but thought maybe Manwari would be a first-round talent. A lot of big-time SEC guys. I mean, I believe I saw the stat, 26 of the 32 selected in the first round, Diesel, were SEC and Big Ten players. So, I mean, it's no secret who runs college football. It's no secret where the best players go. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. So, going to be interesting. And also, too, by the way, with my buddies, LSU's Will Campbell. He went 4th overall, I believe, to the New England Patriots, I believe it was. So, we had a fun night watching the draft and certainly kept an eye on it. It was a good time.
Chris, you are the absolute best. Appreciate your time each and every time. Congratulations on joining the Believe Network. I know that's going to, just continue to grow and blow up the SEC Unfiltered brand, man. Proud of you, proud of what you've achieved over these past 2 or 3 years since moving over from Spurs Up Show to SEC Unfiltered. It's a lot of fun covering the best teams in sports instead of being, tied to one program, win or lose, isn't it?
It is, Diesel, and I'll say on that note, hopefully the Gamecocks can get back up there soon. It's very interesting times on the diamond right now with Paul and Airy. We obviously haven't talked about them a ton this season just because of their struggles, but it is quite interesting times for the program. Hope to see him back up again soon.
Chris,
but I appreciate the love, Diesel. Truly, it means the world, man.
Chris, you are the best. Good to talk to you as always. And of course, college football season just around the corner. I mean, we got some time off, then we got summer camp, and man, we're going to hit the ground running. So we'll be talking to you a lot in the upcoming months. Appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, Diesel, looking forward to it, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Chris. That is Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. On the other side of the break, Tolos, right here on the Fan Upstate. Best players still available, position by position, and needs. Where did the Carolina Panthers go with their 2nd round pick after the questionable pick of McMillan? That's next on the Fan Upstate. The Carolina Panthers shock, well, most people by moving to a wide receiver, sticking on offense, as they have been wont to do over the past couple of seasons. Offense. Defensive coordinator Ejiro Overo has got to be in Dan Morgan's office saying, bro, what have I got to do to get a first-round draft pick over here? The heck did I do? Am I on probation for something? A lot of people thought that the Carolina Panthers would go after one of the elite defensive ends, the edge rushers, because they don't have one. But that's not what they did. And the Carolina Panthers are way back in 57th place. Well, 25th in the second round, 57th pick overall. The question is, are any of the decent edge rushers going to fall that far? And that is a tough thing to predict to happen. Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall, who, okay, he looked good at Marshall. That's fine. Good for you. But he didn't do it against the best possible competition. Donovan Ezaruka out of Boston College, who I know that people are getting really hot on. Are they going to be there? 25th pick in the second round. That's, I don't know. So I think the Carolina Panthers are going to be compromised and stay compromised at the defensive end position, the edge rush position. Maybe just kick the can down the road to next year. I mean, you got to think with this offense getting potentially better this year that they're probably not going to be drafting inside the top 10 again next year. You know, they go out there and improve that 5-win total to 6 or 7 or maybe even 8, and that's pushing it. That's a stretch. But you get up in that 6-7 win mark, now you're outside the top 10 when it comes to drafting next year. And I just don't know. If they can wait that long for a good edge rusher. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Who are the best players still out there on the board, not taken in round 1 of the draft? Obviously, we'll start with the quarterback position. Why not? Shedeur Sanders still available. A lot of people thinking that, that Cleveland will go and get Shedeur Sanders with the first pick in the second round. If they did, and way back when, a couple of weeks ago, the conversation was, Shedeur and Travis could both go in the top 3 or 4. And there were some, albeit misguided, mock draft creators saying that Shedeur Sanders would have gone number 2 to the Browns. If they move back and still get the guy they wanted at quarterback with the first pick in the second round, now that would be a genius move. Genius move. But again, you just never know. You never know if these guys are going to be any good. You don't know if Shedeur is going to be any good. I mean, Shedeur certainly packed a whole lot of people around him in his draft party. Is that part of the reason why the Browns didn't want him? Is that the reason why the Steelers didn't want him? They didn't want all that Deion distraction working its way in. I mean, does Deion want to be the coach of 2 teams at the same time? Coach at Colorado and whispering in Shedeur's head, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. Maybe the Steelers said, I don't want to deal with that. Maybe Mike Tomlin had a conversation with Deion. Said, hey, we can't have you interfering with what we're trying to do over here. Second pick goes to the Texans. Third pick goes to the Titans. The Browns have the 4th pick as well. Browns need quarterback. Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, the only 2 on the roster. I think they do get Shedeur with probably 33, and then who knows what they need after that. Best player available at that point after that. Panthers got to get an edge rusher. They got to get one. They just need bodies at this point. So it's going to be fun to see. Best wide receiver still available on the board, Luther Burden III out of Missouri, a versatile guy, a really athletic guy, little bit undersized. I think whoever picks up Luther Burden is going to get a good wide receiver, probably not a wide receiver 1, maybe a slot guy is where you put him. Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, he's still available. He's really good at going up and getting those 50-50 balls. He's a guy that some teams are going to look at. Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. He's a good kind of 50-50 guy with good receiving and good blocking under his belt. Colton Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, still on the board. Mike Green, like I said, Mike Green and Donovan Ezeraku, the two best edges on the board. Will Johnson, people, they let him slip. And I think that's probably a safe call to let Will Johnson slip. He's been injured. He had the knee injury. He had the turf toe injury. And those kind of things sort of add up. The question is, how much do you want to use him? I understand why you don't use a first-round pick on the guy. No doubt he goes today, number 2, and goes today in the second round. Really excited to see what happens with Nick Emanwari. I thought he was going to be a first-round draft pick yesterday. Really believe he's going to be the first safety taken off the board today. Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, still on the board. Some good linemen still out there. Darius Alexander from Toledo and Walter Nolan from Mississippi. Ole Miss still on the board. Twitchy guy. He can get off the line really quickly. Going to be fascinating to see what happens tonight as we get rounds 2 and 3 in the NFL draft. Don't forget, coming up a little bit later on in the show, Daily Wires at 5 o'clock. We'll have our draft audio bonanza at 5, efforting JJ Hardy of Panthers Culture at 5:20. We'll see what happens with that one. But on the other side of the break, we go to a guy who's got over 200,000 followers on Twitter. He is one of the absolute best when it comes to covering the NFL draft. Ross Tucker, our Odyssey NFL insider. Ross Tucker, going to join us next, right here on the Fan Upstate. Tolos, we get rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL drafts kicking off at 8 o'clock this evening from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Are you going to be watching rounds 2 and 3 with the equal amount of gusto that you did in round number 1? 2, super exciting. 3 is kind of where it starts to dip away and fall off for me to convince us why the entirety of the NFL draft holds a tremendous amount of intrigue. I go to the phone lines, bring on Ross Tucker on the line, Odyssey NFL insider Ross Tucker. Make sure to check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, daily NFL podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Ross, thanks for joining the show. I know you've been insanely busy and maybe feeling the after effects of the party that you threw last night. You said it feels like this is the first time you've made it. This is your I made it moment in sports. Tell us about this party and this bar that you were at last night.
Yeah, well, first of all, great to talk with you. And second of all, yeah, my throat's a little scratchy.
Oh.
So you guys have probably been there before.
Yeah.
So you know where I'm at. But, you know, it's funny because obviously it was really cool to play in the NFL for a while. That was a dream come true. And then doing games on TV for CBS and Western One on radio was terrific. But guys, if you would have told me, okay, when I was 17 or 21 or whatever, that someday someone would say to me, "Hey, Ross, can we pay you to go to your favorite bar in your hometown, drink beer, and watch the draft?" I mean, that's basically what all my other buddies, everybody from where I'm from, they pay to do that.
Yeah.
So the fact that I got paid to just be there and hang out with them and others, it was just, it was really cool.
You know, Ross, it feels like, you know, Cam Ward, that pick was inevitable there at number 1. The fireworks kicked off immediately after that when the Jags moved up to take Travis Hunter at number 2. Was that too much to leverage to go get a guy like Travis Hunter? He's probably the most elite receiver in the class, probably the most elite cornerback in the class, and you get both of those guys in one pick. Yeah, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round picks, those get swapped around, but most of the time those are depth guys or they don't even end up making the team long term. Was giving up a first round pick next year and this year too much for a guy like Travis?
You know, I think the only way he's worth it is if you have a really good plan for him to, in fact, be able to make an impact on both sides of the ball, right? Like if you have that plan and you're going to be able to get him to impact your team on both sides of the ball, then I think you probably can make a case that he's worth it, right? Obviously, the Browns didn't think so. I think there are probably some teams that had some skepticism about his ability to really play both ways at that level and how they would go about it, how they would even do it, right? And so for the Browns to get a guy they think will be a difference-making defensive tackle right away is huge. But then, listen, the Browns need a quarterback. And getting the first-round pick for the Jaguars next year, they probably think the Jaguars won't be very good, right? And so to have a chance at another top 10 pick next year, where it's supposed to be a better draft for quarterbacks, that seems very smart. That makes a lot of sense to me, what the Browns did. That said, I've been doing this pretty long now. Travis Hunter is the best college football player I've ever seen. I did their game against Colorado State last year for CBS, and you guys know, everybody's Clemson fans or whatever, everybody runs these up-tempo offenses, right? It's like, you know, he was playing like 140, 150 snaps a game. That is just ridiculous. And you already said it, number 1 corner and number 1 receiver. It's unbelievable. And I do think that he can have an impact on both sides of the ball. You know, I saw where the GM for the Jaguars said this guy could change the sport forever, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, they obviously feel that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted him where they did.
Yeah, Ross, the Jaguars give Trevor Lawrence his wide receiver one. You got to think, I mean, this is the best case scenario for Trevor that he's had there in Jacksonville. How much pressure now is on him to finally ascend and become the quarterback that we all thought he was going to be when he came out at Clemson? He's got the keys now. It's on him to get it done, and if he can't, I wonder how long Trevor stays a Jaguar.
I think that's probably part of it too. I mean, they obviously believe in him and they think he's the guy long term. But I think on some level, you know, they want to make sure that they give him every resource to show that the contract he got, that he was worthy of that and that he can produce. I also think this new regime kind of wanted to make a statement about, hey, we're not afraid to make big moves. You know, it's almost like they felt like they were losing their relevancy a little bit. And a big, bold move like this, certainly, you know, it was the most notable thing that happened last night, right? I mean, it was the biggest thing that happened in the first round. And it's what everybody's talking about, that and Shedeur Sanders. And so because of that, you know, the Jags kind of made a statement. And I think that they feel like he's going to change the game and that now they're giving Trevor Lawrence a guy for the next couple of years that he can really grow with. Because it feels like the other receivers that they try to do that with, Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis and whatever, it just doesn't seem like they've really worked out that well for whatever reason.
You know, Ross, I hear that, you know, whiskey and atomic hot sauce is great for the voice. Are you going to be back out doing it again tonight, you know, partying hard for round 2 and 3?
Definitely not. That was a one-night thing. But, you know, it's funny because when you're at a bar, like for 4 or 5 hours and everybody's there to talk to you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm walking around the bar and there's like, I don't know, 100 people there. And you're just talking and talking and talking and mixing in some Labatt Blue Lights. It's an experiment that is bound to end in this manner more often than not.
Ross, we're here, you know, squarely in Carolina Panther country, just about an hour and a half southwest of Charlotte, and so much of the conventional wisdom. And it didn't seem like there was any way it was going to go any other direction than edge rusher. And then Dan Morgan and co, they throw a curveball at us, and they throw an elite level wide receiver in Tet McMillan, which, you know, certainly helps with a young quarterback. I said in the first segment of this show that, you know, now there's no more excuses for Bryce Young. He's got 2 really good wide receivers, back-to-back first-round wide receivers. It's on him now to figure it out. And if he can't, there's a great wide receiver core for whoever comes in after this. How shocked were you that the Carolina Panthers went wide receiver and didn't give Ejiro Evero any help?
I was surprised. I was definitely surprised. Now, 2 things on that. Number one, I think you said it exactly right. They need to figure out this year whether or not Bryce Young is worthy of a new contract, whether or not he's worthy of the 5th-year option. And so they don't want there to be any excuses as to how he performs this year. They want that decision, which is the most important for the franchise, to be crystal clear at the end of this year. And remember this, it's a really deep draft for edge rushers and for D tackles. And I think, you know, I had guys come on my show, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and tell me that, you know, they had starting level grades on 35 D tackles, or that, you know, 30 some D tackles should go in the first 3 rounds. And so what that tells me is that they're in a situation now because of that they can get D lineman tonight. D lineman that will play for them and will be in the rotation, tonight. But they couldn't get a guy that they believe is a difference-making receiver tonight. And remember, Canales came to Carolina, as you guys know, from Tampa. And the guy that T-Mac gets compared to the most is Mike Evans, right? And Canales saw just how valuable it is to have a big target like that who can run and make plays. And so I think he thinks maybe he's getting his Mike Evans.
We're talking to Ross Tucker right here on the Fan Upstate. Find him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Make sure you go and give him a follow. Keep building that empire that he's got going over there. What do you think of the knocks on Mike Green, the tackle of the edge out of Marshall, that he hadn't been doing it against, NFL level offensive linemen at Marshall playing in the Sun Belt? That's really been the big knock on him. I know Donovan Ezaraku is not far behind him. Either one of those guys could be available to Carolina when they gets all the way back there to number 57. Would you let, not playing in a Power 4 conference be a reason not to draft Mike Green?
Well, so Mike Green absolutely destroyed Ohio State when Marshall played them. So I don't think people are as concerned about that. He has some major off-field concerns that I think people are really shying away from. So no interest in getting into the details of those. I think you can Google it or look it up, but I think every team has to do their own research and then decide, how they feel about his background and the things that he's been accused of.
Ross, with Shedeur falling out of the first round, and you go back to some of those really early mock drafts, and there's some great audio. I'm sure you maybe you've run across it, maybe you haven't. It's Scott Van Pelt saying they don't really know who these guys are going to be, and so a lot of the projections are difficult to project, and the grades afterwards are difficult to do. It takes time to figure out what these guys are going to be in the NFL. But Shedeur falling as far as he did, having been mocked as high as he did, does it shock you that Shedeur wasn't taken? Does it shock you that Jackson Dart ended up jumping him and going to the Giants? I mean, the Giants even moved up to get him. We even had one of our listeners say, why would they move up when nobody behind them needed a quarterback, or nobody ahead of them left needed a quarterback? Why would you move up to go take a guy like Jackson Dart? From that position standpoint, what was your surprises there?
Well, as far as the Giants are concerned, they were, I'm sure, worried that there were other teams drafting in the second round, like the Saints, like the Browns, that might have been trying to trade up for Jackson Dart as well. So I think that would be, I guess, the first thing I would say about that is that's the reason why you trade up, is because you're concerned that if you don't, somebody else is going to, right? And maybe they knew that someone else was going to. That is entirely possible. So that's that part of it. Then you've got the Shedeur thing. I think it's going to only get worse, guys. I think he might be in for a long wait. I really do. Because there's kind of like I just said this on social media, at Ross Tucker NFL. There's kind of like a Tebow element to Shedeur Sanders in that he's extremely, extremely polarizing, right? And he's like a lightning rod no matter what you say about him. And, it's one thing to deal with that when the guy's a starter, but especially now that he's not going to go until the second or third or whenever, now that he's going to be a backup, man, coaches really, really don't want a backup quarterback who's a distraction, who, there's a huge segment of people that are going to be saying, why isn't he playing? He should be starting. Why don't you have him out there? I think it could be a long night for Shedeur.
To your mind, have any of the personnel that you've chatted with, have they looked at Deion himself being an additional distraction? I think I said earlier in our show here today that, is it possible that a GM or a coach has Deion in their ear or in their text messages saying, hey, here's what you should do with my son? And Deion may try to influence a second team and coach a second team. In your mind, is that any kind of a red flag for Shedeur?
I haven't heard that, and I don't think that that's the case. I think it has more to do with Shedeur as a player and quite frankly, as a person. I think he has done a bunch of things to turn a bunch of people off. And, these teams, these are very, very important decisions. These are major investments. And if they're concerned about the way you conduct yourself or the way you go about things, they're not going to draft you that high unless you're really, really, really good and worth it. And I think that's where we're at. I think where we're at is nobody really thinks that he's worth everything that comes with him.
NFC South, Buccaneers, we already talked about what the Carolina Panthers did with their picks. Saints went offensive tackle with Kelvin Banks. Bucks got themselves a phenomenal wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. And, of course, the Falcons just keep stacking edge rushers. Is anybody going to be able to get the ball out in time on the Falcons? They've already got a decent edge room, and then they add Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. It doesn't seem like they want anybody getting the ball out.
Well, I think that the Falcons realize they need to get better on defense, and in particular along the defensive line. It's been an issue for them for a long, long time. And so I think that they felt like, that's why they doubled down. I thought the trade back into the first round for James Pierce, I thought that was ridiculous. I really did. I thought that was one of the more egregious moves that were made in the draft. That is a lot to give up to get a second edge rusher at the end of round one. They gave up next year's first round pick. That's crazy.
He is Ross Tucker at Ross Tucker NFL. Worked hard last night. You can hear it in his voice. Good luck to you getting your voice back squared away. And I know you're not done. You're going to be posting up a ton of content over the next couple of days with this thing. We appreciate your time and have a great second and third round tonight.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yes, sir. That is Ross Tucker at Ross Tucker NFL. Make sure you find him on social media. That is Odyssey NFL Insider Ross Tucker. Make sure you check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, daily NFL podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back, Tolos, I want to hear from you. This is your opportunity to get out your phones and call in 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. How did you do draft night last night? Call in, describe your scene, and how are Cole and I doing in our shirtless challenge, the 1-2 picks in each position group? That coming your way next. I got to believe that you Tolos partied hard last night for the first round of the NFL draft because the conversation is lacking. JD is a big part of it. Somebody who goes by the clearly false name of wrestling is awesome because wrestling sucks. He's in the stream. He's all over it. Madcraft is there as well. Give me your thoughts on your team's selections in the first round of the NFL draft. I know Madcraft's he's riding high today. He's feeling good. Yeah, I'm sure he's gone written all over the walls at his local truck stop bathroom, Cam Ward #1, and that's fine, man. Go ahead, vandalize if you want. But give me your thoughts on your team's first round draft performance. Do you like the pick? Even if it wasn't the one that you wanted, do you believe that your team got better? And that's where I land with the Carolina Panthers. They got better. Undeniably, they got better at the wide receiver position because they didn't have a true #1 wide receiver. Hopefully, Tet McMillan can grow into that. King Tet, as texters on the text line are calling it, 844-326-3663. But we'll see if he can develop into that guy. He needed a 6'4", rangy, lengthy kind of guy, did the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young, to see if Bryce Young really is the guy. And Ross Tucker really put that point out there in the last segment that this season will leave no doubt whether or not Bryce Young is the guy in Carolina. Michael Jutz on the stream says, this Bills fan is happy that we drafted a corner. We need to get a defensive tackle or edge rusher today. Everybody's needing edge rusher, but there's a lot of them out there, man. They are a dime a dozen. Wrestling is awesome, says my team picked a national champion. So yes, I'm very happy about that. Wrestling is amazing, sir. Well, at least you called me by the name sir instead of some of the other things that you've been calling me throughout the stream today. So wire to wire with Diesel and Cole. Bryce and Cole off today. We'll be back together on Monday to do this thing. How did you take in the draft last night? Ross was out, had himself a big night. He was talking all night, wearing those vocal cords out. Some Tolos, of course, were at the bars as I drive past the restaurants up and down Woodruff Road, like Twin Peaks. That place was packed out. I drove past another bar or two on my way home. Those places were packed out. So you guys were out having themselves a good time. He called me Tom Selleck. He also called me Kevin James. Wrestling is awesome. So I do love Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, and Mr. Baseball, among many, many other things. Madcraft says next to a campfire at the beach. Yeah, Madcraft, he's an interesting case study. Madcraft ditched us on a round of golf this weekend. He'd been begging to go play. We give him an opportunity. Says, sorry, no, family commitments. He's actually down in the lower part of the state. His brother competing in track and field championships. And that's awesome, man. I didn't realize you had actual athletes in the family. So Madcraft, he's excused this time, but this will be the only time you're going to be excused. Next time we ask you, you better come. I was at the house eating some pizza, having myself a delicious fatty dinner, which is not going to look good for me on Monday when this shirtless challenge comes to fruition. But we'll talk about that again here in a second. I was having trouble for whatever reason. I couldn't re-log into my ESPN app and watch the actual live Roger Goodell on podium, all that stuff. So I had to watch the NFL draft through the Pat McAfee show. And you Tolos know that I can't stand the Pat McAfee show. As a matter of fact, the odd thing about it is Pat was by far not the worst part of that show last night. Pat was fine. Pat was good. His insight was good. It was all the other cast of characters around him on the show that had me scratching my head. This guy, Ty, who's on their show, who was doing, he dressed up like Shefty, but he was trying to make him sound like Kuiper. I didn't really understand that one. It was a bad character bit. I had to suffer through that all night long. And I had to suffer through Boston Connor as well with his long locks and his big old mustache. It's great when Tom Selleck wears it. It's not great when Boston Connor wears it. Let's go to the phone lines and get a hold of our first caller of the day. Woo. Caller, who's this? Where are you calling from?
Rick from Greer.
Hello, Rick from Greer. You sound like you're not in Greer. You sound like you're on the road. Are you moving some merchandise today in your big rig?
Yeah, I'm selling firecrackers today. I'm fireworks.
Man of many
Got
talents.
some fireworks. I just got through with the flea markets.
Buying or selling?
Selling fireworks.
Well, okay. I mean, you could have bought fireworks from the flea market and then turn around and try to sell them outside of your local elementary school. I don't know what you do, Rick.
No, I bought them from one flea market and sold them at another flea market.
Hopefully at an upcharge. What's up?
Let's talk about. I'm a Panther fan. You know that.
Yeah.
I have been very disappointed.
Why?
Who in the holy heck is this receiver they got? Why didn't they get an edge rusher?
They got Ted McMillan out of Arizona. Massive talent, massive speed.
Never heard of him.
Well, that's because you don't watch enough college football, Rick. What's going on with you?
Arizona never wins. Okay. They never win.
Well, the Colorado Buffaloes didn't win a lot this season either, yet they had the number 2 overall pick. You don't have to be a winning team to have one of the most talented guys at a position group.
So he is talented?
Yeah, he's talented. He's 6'4".
Well, I never heard of him.
He's 6'4". He goes up and gets the ball. He's a burner. I mean, he could be the Carolina Panthers' Mike Evans.
Okay, what does he run? A 5'8", 40?
Well, let me look up Ted McMillan. Combine
40.
Combine
Cole's
stats.
probably faster than this guy.
Cole claims to have run a 5'2". Now, I still don't believe it. I got to put the real tail of the tape on this one.
I could outrun Cole.
Tet is 6'4", 220 pounds, so he's a big-bodied wide receiver. I'm still trying to find his 40 time. Rick, you asked me this live on the air. It doesn't make for the best possible radio.
Hogan's a big dude. That don't mean he can play football.
What? But did you trust Xavier Legette to be the Carolina Panthers' number 1 wide receiver?
No.
Well, there you go. Tet ran a 4.48 40-yard dash. He's quick.
That's pretty quick.
Right?
I might have to go back and get some more season tickets this year.
So I mean, look, I get where you're coming from. Panthers wanted edge. Carolina Panthers fans wanted edge, but I mean, I guess they felt that, after Abdul Carter, everybody was basically the same, and they could go get themselves a good one in the second round.
Let me tell you one other thing before I go. The Braves are back, baby.
The Braves are back. All right, Rick, we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Rick, appreciate the phone call. Good luck selling those firecrackers, man. Don't blow your fingers off. Rick came by on Wednesday, saw us out there at Ingles in Powdersville, which, by the way, next Wednesday, we're going to be on the road again at another Ingles Markets. Next Wednesday, you're going to be able to see us out at the Ingles on Warren H. Abernathy Highway in Spartanburg. Don't know if Rick is going to be out on the road selling firecrackers or toilet seats or whatever it is he's going to have to sell next time. But hey, hopefully he'll come by and see us again and you can meet Rick. But Rick brought his lady friend last week. That was interesting. Rick brought his lady friend. Sweet lady. Sweeter than he deserves, probably. Jonathan Brooks says, idiots call into this show so often. Geez, your words, Jonathan, not mine. But hey, if you're smart, call into the show. Jonathan, we want all Tolos to get out their phones and dial 844-326-3663. Wrestling is Awesome says, does Rick know of any wide receivers that are any good? I don't know. I think Rick was so just, staring down the barrel of that edge rushing position that he didn't really pay attention to any other position this year. I didn't think there was any chance that the Panthers were going receiver. That blew me away. That one really, really did. That really blew me away. It seemed like edge was the only pick for the Carolina Panthers. But that's what makes the NFL draft so much fun and so damn hard to predict. Because you get these reports all season long that so-and-so team is going to do this. So-and-so team is going to do that. But the reports don't mean squat when you actually get to draft time. Listen to John Gruden. John Gruden was hearing his co-host, he was on the DraftKings broadcast, and they were talking about reports. This was at this point, it was sort of deep into the first round, somewhere around pick number 20 or so. And the host of the show starts talking about reports, and John Gruden wasn't having it.
There are reports that they really like.
Yeah.
We have seen
What do you
Pittsburgh.
mean there's reports? I'm so tired of these reports. I mean,
Get his
reports of what?
Get his ass.
Reports of them.
Who wrote the freaking report?
Who wrote the report, Jay?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There are reports that Pete Carroll was texting that they were going to take a tackle from Texas. You know, there are so many bullshit reports. Here's the thing. The Denver Broncos and then the Steelers. Okay, who are the Broncos going to take? But to your point, where's Sanders going?
Right.
It's got to be Pittsburgh.
If it's not 21, he ain't going tonight. I don't think he's going tonight. Because if somebody's trading up to get him.
All right, come on, it's 2025. Why does the FCC, when kids are hearing curse words at like 5 years old in their cartoons, and people want to watch these guys say what they want to say without having to censor themselves all the time? Like, why don't we just let it fly? Why don't we just let it fly? Come on, get rid of the FCC. Doge, make it happen. Let's get rid of the FCC. Let us all say what we want to say. Madcraft says, I'll take Jonathan on that. Silly goose. Madcraft, you're still on the silly goose material. Nobody's going to say that, man. Stop trying to make fetch happen. Wrestling is Awesome says, nobody listens to Mel Kiper. Who's talking about Mel Kiper? We're talking about John Gruden. Talking about John Gruden. Oh, are you talking about the character on the Pat McAfee broadcast who was kind of pulling a Mel Kiper character, which was it was all over the place. It was an all over the place character. Ty Schmidt, I think, is his actual name. Texter says Ted McMillan is faster than Cole. Texter says wrestling is awesome is really Lonzo. Packers pick was okay, but Clay Matthews was amazing. It's wire to wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Just having to watch through the Pat McAfee show is awful. It was awful. They were not on time with their picks. They were like flashing to the stage. They would miss the pick half the time. By the end of the show, they were like, we don't really care. We're just going to BS our way through the rest of this thing anyway. Back to the shirtless challenge that Wrestling is Awesome wants to know about. You're just making me say it over and over and over again, and I don't like you for that. I appreciate you being here, but I don't like you for that. Cole and I had this little challenge that I issued yesterday that we were trying to predict the first and second player taken at each position group, excluding punters and kickers because they're not real people, in this NFL draft. And we have completed almost all of the position groups. I think safety is the only one that didn't have two safeties taken. Nick Emenwari probably going to be the first safety taken in this second round of the NFL draft. But we tried to predict who was going to be the first player taken at each position group, first and second player at each position group. 2 points for first pick correct, 1 point for second pick correct, no points for anything else. And I got to tell you, it's not going well for me. So Tolos, unless my math is wrong here, and it very well could be, because I was counting this on my fingers and my toes. Monday, you're going to see more of me than you've ever wanted to see. And that's the truth. It's going to happen. I was right about Cam Ward and Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker. I wasn't right about a ton else. And, Cole and I, we try to differ in our picks to make things a little more interesting. But when conventional wisdom is there for a reason, and a lot of these 1-2s seemed locked in at who was going to be one and who was going to be number two. The real surprises, for me at least, with the tight end position was the offensive line position, safety, corner. I mean, I thought teams were going to look past the Will Johnson injuries and realize that with another couple of months of rehab, that he is an uber talented guy, would have probably been a top 10 pick if he had not gotten injured, that they would look past that and give him a chance to recover because of the upside being as good as it was. At least a late first round pick. That still surprises me. But yeah, it looks like yours truly going to be rocking the no shirt look on Monday. And I'm sorry for those of you who are going to tune into the show. It is what it is. And I lost. I issued the challenge. I laid down the gauntlet and I lost. Stephen Webb says, tell the truth, Diesel. Cole Bryson is hitting the gym hard today to get ready for being shirtless on Monday. Well, I'm going to have to do that, Stephen Webb. I'm going to have to do that. I'm playing golf on Sunday. I don't know that one round of golf is enough to get me to get all this back into shape by Monday at 3:00. But I'm going to try. I'm going to spend my entire weekend outside of that round of golf doing push-ups, and I'm going to try to be as svelte as I can be for you Tolos on Monday. When we come back, Daily Wires, our whip around the sports world. There's more than just the NFL draft going on. We'll get to all of it and more next on the Fan Upstate. Wrestling Nerd says he is going to be absent that day, not watching the stream when I looks like I'll be shirtless on Monday, paying up for my stupid bet. Stupid. No, you're not. You're going to be there lurking in the background, glued to the television set. It's time for our Daily Wires. What else is happening out there in the sports world? Clemson University and head basketball coach Brad Brownell have agreed to a contract extension through 2031. The terms of the contract were approved by the Clemson University Board of Trustees Compensation Committee. Brad is the winningest coach in program history with 292 wins and led his team to an embarrassing first-round loss. I don't understand this. Clemson, who's coming after Brad Brownell right now? Who is coming after him after getting beat by Will Wade and McNeese State to start the tournament? Who's coming after your guy? I don't get it. Number 25, NC State beat number 2 Clemson. Not beat them. They absolutely mollywopped them. 14-4 in 8 innings last night. NC State scored in each of the first 6 innings. Braden Fraseman went 5 for 5 with 2 homers and 7 RBIs in the Wolfpack's victory. The series continues today at 6 p.m. Can Clemson, the number 2 team, bounce back? This would be a big-time hit to their number 2 status. They probably wouldn't hold on to it if they lost the series to NC State. Got to get the win tonight, push it to Saturday to see if they can take the series in this one. But South Carolina was going to start their 3-game series at Kentucky tonight at 6:30. As the show comes to a close, we'll try to see what kind of updates we can get you both on the Clemson and the South Carolina games. Clemson, again, going to go first pitch here in just about an hour and 10 minutes. Despite a 3-run bottom of the ninth, the Hub City Spartanburgers fell to the Greenville Drive at Fifth Third Park last night, 6-3. Cole was over here talking all that trash yesterday, talking all that mess about how the Burgers were going to sweep the Drive, that Spartanburg was better, that people in Greenville are just stuck up, snooty, wine and cheese baseball fans. And then look what happens. Look what happens, Cole. This should be a lesson. I think that's why Cole is out today, is that he didn't want to face the music for all of his trash talking on behalf of the Spartan Burgers last night. We'll see. We'll see what happens in tonight's game. 4th game of the series. Can the Drive even it up, or will the Spartan Burgers pull away? Last night in that game, Dylan Dreiling, the Rangers' number 10 overall prospect, who's hitting .273 on the season, tallied 3 hits, 1 against each Drive pitcher. Wrestling is Awesome says, glad to see someone like me on the comments that loves the wrestling. It's just you, man. It's just you talking about wrestling into the ether. In a shocking turn of events last night in the NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders fell out of the first round. Some people were putting him as high as 4 or 5 early in this mock system, and then Shedeur just fell like a rock, man. Just hit the ground. I have no doubt he's going to go tonight. He's going to go in the 2nd round tonight, maybe even to Cleveland, the team that, had expressed some interest in him before. Honestly, I think he's a little bit of a developmental guy, so he's going to need to go somewhere that is going to have some patience with him. In that sense, I don't know that Cleveland is the right team. That franchise has never shown patience with young quarterbacks. It's rotate them in and out, like a revolving door. Former NFL running back Adrian Peterson was arrested Friday morning in Minnesota and charged with 4th-degree driving while impaired. The charge is a misdemeanor. His court date is scheduled for May 9th, though it is not his first run-in with the law in recent days. And he's got some issues that Adrian Peterson needs to work out. John Moran, who injured his hip during a hard fall Thursday in a loss to the Thunder, was spotted on crutches in the tunnel afterwards. Grizzlies interim coach Tuomas Isalo, I probably said that wrong, said that his status for Saturday's potential elimination game is uncertain. In case you missed it, all the conversation today, Cam Ward went 1, Travis Hunter 2, and Abdul Carter 3. Rounds 2 and 3 going to start tonight at 8 o'clock. Teteroa McMillan, the number 8 pick for the Carolina Panthers, said that he was, quote, young and dumb when he said he didn't watch game film. That's been one of the big knocks on him, his dedication to the game. He said he is not that guy anymore, though we do know that character assassination hit pieces are all too common in the NFL draft, used to push guys down the leaderboard, down the draft board, so that teams can pick them up a little bit later. The Braves are back in action tonight at Arizona. Chris Sale versus Zach Gallen. Sean Murphy getting hot. He's got 6 homers on the season. Marcelo Zuna knocking the cover off the ball at a .318 average. And Spencer Strider is back on the 10-day IL. When we come back, what did the draft sound like? We'll do an audio bonanza next with tons of audio from last night's round 1 of the NFL draft. That's next. Top to bottom, not the absolutely most surprising round one of the NFL draft we've ever seen. I mean, yeah, we did have the Jaguars move up to number 2 to take Travis Hunter. We saw the Cleveland Browns move back. We saw, the Giants move up to take a quarterback that they might have been able to get if they just sat right there where they were, though, it stands to logic that they had heard somebody was interested in their guy, so they moved up to go take Jackson Dart at quarterback. But there was a lot of fun, interesting, amazing sounds from round one of the NFL draft. And I had a Tolo reach out earlier, and he texted in about Clay Matthews and his pick. And again, Tolos, I wasn't able to watch the actual main ESPN feed of the draft. I had a little glitch going on with my system, and I couldn't watch that broadcast, and so I had to watch it through the Pat McAfee show, and they weren't showing all of the picks as guys were coming up on stage to make their picks. But now, Tolo, I understand what you're saying. Clay Matthews got up on stage to make a pick, and he trolled Bears fans as only Clay Matthews can. Here's what that sounded like.
Real quick, Roger, but I just got off the phone with the president, Donald Trump. He asked me to pass a message along to all 32 NFL franchises. So let me tell you what it reads here, all right?
What's he going to say? Raise your taxes, you owe me more, what?
It says, my fellow Americans, the Bears still suck!
Oh, the Packer great right there in hometown, taking the low-hanging fruit, ripping on the Bears. God, I love Clay Matthews. That dude is just all energy all day. Here's what it sounded like when Ashton Genty pulled up to the draft, rocking some unconventional footwear. I would say it's unconventional, but now it's kind of everywhere. They're blinged out, accessoried out. Here was Ashton Genty asked about his blinged out Crocs.
Earlier, we saw you pulling out the suit, looking at it, and it's great, but I'm a little jealous of you right now because your footwear is far more comfortable than mine. What's going on here with the Crocs?
Yeah, Crocs with the Swarovski crystals in them, and, just trying to show you can be comfortable but still look fly as well,
You're pulling it off well, and I think I'm going to just go out on a limb and say you're the first person to wear Crocs the first round of the NFL draft.
God, Crocs are so ugly. I don't get it. What is with you Crocs people? What is with you Crocs people? You're like, oh, they're comfortable. Yeah, but they're ugly. They are the ugliest shoes ever created. They were featured in the movie Idiocracy because it was the cheapest thing that Mike Judge could get his hands on. And he's like, let me put my prisoners in these Crocs because they're so ugly nobody would ever buy them. God. Here's audio of Stanford Steve asking Scott Van Pelt what part of the draft he just cannot stand the most, whether it's the lead up, the build up, all of the conversation, or if it's these post-draft grades.
What do you hate more, this pre-draft mock season or the immediate post-draft grade?
You know the answer to that. Hey, Scott, we're going to do draft grades. No, we're not. You don't want to do a draft grade? No, I sure don't. Why not? Because nobody has a clue, including the teams that just took the players. Why do we do this? Draft B-. Say anything. Just make up anything. Who gives? It doesn't matter. And you don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. It's a little Andy North. Oh, inside the Beltway. But truly, people can't possibly know. I don't mind the speculation. The speculation's fun. It's the fuel for the engine. But the grade bit, you can miss me with that forever.
I'm with Scott, man. These the post-draft grades, you don't know what these guys are going to become. You just don't know what these guys are going to become. Little curveball for you here, Tolos. We're going to be joined. I'm going to go off to this break very, very early, and I'm going to be joined by JJ Hardy of Panthers Culture, a fantastic Carolina Panthers podcast. We're going to break down this Tet McMillan move at number 8 for the Carolina Panthers. We'll get back to this audio bonanza a little bit later on, but let me jump off here and be joined by JJ Hardy next. So I'm going to let you Tolos in on a little backside conversation. Last night about 8:50, 9 o'clock, I'm texting with our very next guest, JJ Hardy, the host of Panthers Culture podcast, at Panthers Culture on Twitter. And I say the very simple words, the Carolina Panthers better not mess this up. And his first message back to me was, I think they already did. Welcome into the show, JJ Hardy at Panthers Culture. Did they really mess it up that badly, though, JJ? I mean, look, the offense was not good last year. The defense was not good last year. Nothing was all that good last year for the Carolina Panthers, at least not until the last 4 or so games of the season. Wide receiver was going to be a need for this team eventually because I didn't feel like Xavier Legette was going to grow into that true number one, every big possession kind of wide receiver, and that eventually they'd have to go get him one. What was your thoughts when you first heard the pick is in and the pick is Tet McMillan?
Well, my first thought, and I try to keep it real with everything that I say and do regarding these Panthers and in general. And my first thought was, I really wanted defense, right? Jalen Walker was there. I actually had a graphic prep for Jalen Walker, if I'm being honest, like a graphic to share with Jalen Walker because they said psych. I'm not mad at the player. I want to make that clear. I'm not mad that they picked T-Mac, Tetrell McMillan. I'm having a struggle trying to figure out how to, how to dedicate saying his name. But T-Mac I think he's a solid pick for who Dave Canales is, for who Dan Morgan continues to be for David Tepper, and I think their continuance to show support for Bryce Young. So let me be clear about that. I think he's the guy that they targeted to continue their progress that they started last season. And I believe he is the guy that takes the pressure off of Xavier Legette, from having to be the number one wide receiver. I think a lot of the disappointment with Legette was that he, was because he kind of came up short and people expected him to be a big time player, and he really wasn't ready for that spot. I think this allows for Xavier Legette to have more freedom in Dave Canales' scheme because I think they envision T-Mac being a guy that can dictate coverage, a guy that they can kind of play off of. And if you don't roll coverage his way, then they're going to go to him if he has one-on-one and just use that big body, that big frame, that large catch radius and win, against, one-on-one. And so I think the player selection was smart for who Dave Canales is and what he wants. So I have no problem with the player. When I reviewed the player, at first I said I wasn't going to watch any film on him because, the word was out that he didn't watch film, but I understand that that's old news now. But I did, once we got closer and people started talking about him more, I leaned into it a little bit more, and I didn't see any flaws in his game, right? A lot of people hate what they think he is or is not, and honestly, he looks fast enough. He looks crisp enough in his route running. He's a big guy, long strider, so he doesn't look super fast because his legs aren't moving as fast as shorter guys, right? He's taking longer strides. But I believe that he's solid in every element of being a wide receiver, and him just being 6'4" with a large catch radius just makes him look a little bit more imposing than the average 6', 6'1", 6'2" wide receiver. So I am satisfied, that they have, I think, completed the offensive puzzle. We have a really good offensive line. I don't care what anybody say. This has been the best offensive line unit that we've had in years in Carolina. We have 2 solid running backs. I think we have an okay tight end room, but I think the wide receiver room went from just being blah to okay, I'm excited to see what they can do all together. So overall, I feel a lot better than I felt last night in real time. And the tweet back to not the tweet, the text back to you last night was based on my, leaning in on we got to go defense. Yeah. And so I'm better now.
Well, and the hard part, JJ, is we just watched a divisional foe in the Falcons get that much better at edge. Take the guy that a lot of Carolina Panthers fans thought had a really good chance to be the guy, whether it was going to be Walker or the other edge from Georgia. That guy goes down to the Atlanta Falcons, and now instead of having him on your team, you got to play against him, twice a year. I just wonder, how at what point does Edro Avero get frustrated and say, guys, what do I have to do to get a first round pick over here? Like, we've been going offense every year. What do I have to do to go get myself an elite guy on defense so that I can start bringing this defense back to where it needs to be?
I don't know if Evero is just like the ultimate company guy, as it relates to just, I'll take whatever you give me, just keep me employed. I don't know if that's his motto or not, because at one point he was a highly coveted defensive coordinator, and some thought would be a potential head coach candidate before he got to Carolina. And so, last year, the defense was historically bad, right? And that's the reason for much of my consternation was, this dude is horrible, at coaching defense, but it may not be that. It might be the talent, that he's dealing with. And so I really felt like, okay, based on some of the offseason rhetoric from the front office, I felt like they understood, that they really need to get better on defense, and that they would allow for, I won't say just Evero, but they would just focus on defense for the holistic needs of the team, and Evero would benefit from it. But I heard an interesting narrative that came out, during the draft last night, and I don't know the source of it. I was on a live show last night, so I wasn't tracking everything closely. But I heard that Evero really doesn't want to start a rookie in his defensive scheme. And if that's the case, then that would kind of explain away some of why they probably wouldn't go with a rookie at such high of a pick as a top 10 pick, 8 overall type selection. Because, if you pick a guy at 8, then the fans are going to expect that guy to be on the field. But if Evero isn't comfortable deploying a rookie in his scheme, to due to, I guess it's complex. It doesn't look complex on the field, but, I'm assuming that he doesn't want to deploy a rookie in his scheme. And if you're not going to use him, then why draft a guy that high, right? So I don't know if that's true or not, but, it definitely caught my ear last night. And so, to answer your question, I don't know if they value Evero, in his opinion, of players, in terms of scouting players for drafting, enough to give him any weigh in for a pick that high. I think, as it relates to Carolina Panthers, I don't think any pick that high, that big of an investment, would ever be made without David Tepper being involved. And people don't want to talk about that part, but I believe that Tepper very much was on board with what they wanted to do. And I believe that Tepper still is in the mode of proving that he made the right selection, 2 drafts ago, and, choosing Bryce overall. And I think they're doing everything to reinforce that. And I think Bryce showed them just enough at the end of last season for them to say, you know what, we're going to go all in and finally give you that talent that we said publicly that we didn't think you need because you was a point guard. So now we have it. And so Evero, I think he's going to be asked to build his defense, with what they brought in free agency. And they may add him a defensive guy, maybe a defensive back, early tonight, or an edge. But it's going to be a guy that I think, they feel he can be confident he can plug and play, but without the scrutiny of, he didn't become a star.
Talking to JJ Hardy, Panthers Culture, at Panthers Culture on Twitter is where you can find him and find his content. He's fantastic. Great follow. Let's talk about Bryce Young and his development. The fact is he's still, a 5'6", 5'7". He's a shrimpy little dude, right? And having a tall wide receiver with now more and more elite edges in his own division, he's going to have to get that ball out early. And McMillan is going to have to start breaking off some of these routes early to get him some help out there. It doesn't really do a guy a ton of good if you got edges in the backfield immediately, but you need 15 yards for your wide receiver to go down there and get loose. So what are you hearing in the offseason as far as Bryce Young's development and the repeatability of what we saw over the last 4 or so weeks of the season, which were obviously a lot better, still could get tremendously better, has a lot more room to grow and to get better from there. But what are you hearing about how Bryce has developed this offseason?
I am hearing zero about how Bryce has developed, like very little. And it's, I don't know if it's strange or not, to not hear very much. And I don't know if it's complacency or just confidence, right? Like, I believe Bryce, played very well, like you said, over the, last, stretch of games that they played, right? Like, we were competitive. I remember being in Charlotte, to watch them play against the Chiefs, and I saw, that he was going almost blow for blow, with Patrick Mahomes. He did everything within his power to win that game. And also the game, against the Eagles. Those teams played in the Super Bowl, and Bryce, he looked the part in those games. And so I don't know if, like, they feel like, okay, that's enough, to prove that you're ready and that we can trust that you can hang with the big boys, on a consistent basis. But, in terms of hearing something, I haven't heard anything. I'm hoping that he's continuing to work. I'm hoping that he is, like, leaning into the things that he was doing late last season, whatever, regimen, he started for himself mentally, physically. I hope he's, like, just leaning into the things that work, things that he trusts about himself. I will, have to push back a little bit. He's not 5'6", 5'7". I guess he is a solid 5'9", 10-ish, right?
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it ain't that much better, when you're trying to throw over guys that 6'5", in front of you. But I think, something that you mentioned is something that I want to see from his development, and I guess we won't be able to, like, actually see it probably until, like, the summer, right? When we seeing him at least going, 11 on 11, can't be touched. But what I want to see from Bryce in his development, like, they have put everything around him that I think he needs to be successful now. So fans and, whoever, I think, people that's been complaining about us not taking care of quarterbacks, based on the history with Cam Newton and, maybe going back to DeLome, I think that narrative is over, right? That's dead. They have done what they need to do for Bryce. So I think everything that happens here forward is what Bryce does for himself. And I think the thing that I would love to see from Bryce is just for him to just be more on time. I want him to be on time with getting the ball out of his hands. I think we have a offensive line that can block, but they're not going to hold guys for more than 2.5 seconds on average. I mean, that's about league average, so I think as a pass blocking unit, that's about, they're going to be about average in terms of being able to hold up, but I think they can hold up long enough for him being able to see his passing lane, and deliver the ball at the top of his drop. Like, a lot of Bryce's big plays come from him improvising, even going back to Alabama, where he had tons of time to just work his magic behind the line of scrimmage and then, get the ball to a playmaker and they do the rest. I think here in Carolina, we saw a little bit of both from him last year, but I want to see more of the traditional drop back, get to the top of your drop, let it rip, hit a guy, 10 to 15 yards down the field and just consistently, matriculate his way down the field surgically. Because that's where, like, the best quarterbacks, that's how they make their money. They're not making their money like, doing magic tricks every week. They do their money by just being consistent, consistently accurate, consistently on time. I think that helps him as a quarterback. It helps the wide receivers, because, like, they're conditioned to running routes, by play design and being open at a specific target, on the field, or a specific, destination on the field. But when they, win versus the cornerback, they expect the ball to be in their hands, and so I think he has that ability. I just think he has to be more consistent about being on time. And I think if he's on time, then I think the offense stays on schedule, and then I think we score more points. I just think that's how it works.
JJ, Carolina Panthers have the 25th pick in tonight's second round of the draft, number 57 overall. I see you put up a list of your day 2 dogs. Go through these guys and give me your best guess as to who that pick is going to be there at 57. And would you riot if the pick is another offensive guy?
Well, I'm a start with your last question. I may ride if the next pick is an offensive guy. Like, the only guy that I won't ride about in day 2 is Travion Henderson, out of Ohio State. And the only reason I won't ride because of him is because I think he's a game breaker in terms of like his speed and his ability to take like a dump off in the backfield and take it 70 yards, or just a handoff, and if he sees a crease, I mean, ever since I saw him at Ohio State, he's always that guy that can just change the game with one touch. And so Travion Henderson is somebody that I always thought was underrated, and even on his own team this past year, he was kind of like lost behind the hype around Judkins. And both talented guys, but I think Henderson is, the game breaker there. So I would make an exception for him. But outside of him, I think there's a bunch of guys on the board that I love. Benjamin Morrison, the top cornerback from Notre Dame, he was injured this past year. I think Ben Morrison had the ability to be one of the top 2 cornerbacks in this class. I think the injury has people concerned, and because he didn't really get to show a lot this last year, then his stock fell. But I had Ben Morrison being a top 15 guy before the injury, and I think he still has that type of talent. He has the pedigree, and I think if he's drafted, I think it'd be a home run pick on day 2. Xavier Watts, another Notre Dame guy. We have a void at free safety, at deep safety, and I think we need a ball hawk. Our biggest defensive free agent pickup was Trevon Merrick from the Raiders, and I think he's a good versatile safety, but I think he's best, closer to the line of scrimmage, kind of in the box. We need a guy that can play deep safety and a guy that can be a ball hawk. Outside of Malachi Starks, I think Xavier Watts, was the best, ball hawking type free safety. And so another guy that I think, if we drafted him, he instantly is a starter on this defense. Will Johnson, another defensive back. Will Johnson was a blue chipper. I'm hearing that this knee situation that he has, may be degenerative. I don't know the facts around that yet, but that supposedly is the reason for his slide. But I'll tell you, when you watch Michigan play, Will Johnson, was a dominant corner for his first 2 years at Michigan. I think he was an All-Pro both times, and so the fact that he's in the second round, that tells me that the knee situation must be significant. And I think if Carolina is interested in him, I think it had to be a situation where the doctors really feel good about, their ability to kind of like stave off the degenerative issue. But if it's significant, then you might see him slide even further. Andrew Makuba is like one of my most interesting DBs. Carolina's never drafted a Clemson player, and I understand Makuba was at Clemson before he transferred to Texas. Technically, they still won't have drafted a Clemson player, but Makuba's one of those guys. When I watched Texas play last year, man, like he was hitting people, like sticking people. Some of these hits might even draw flags in the league, but I love the fact that he's willing to just, go and hit a guy. I think he has good ball skills. He has range. He has somewhat of a slight frame, maybe to hold up at safety in the NFL, being as physical as he is. But I do love his heart. I love his game. Nick Emenwari from South Carolina. I mean, the Panthers love drafting Gamecocks. I think Nick, he blew up the combine. He was the star of the combine with his measurables. I think he ran a 4.3, 11-foot broad, a 42, 43-inch vertical. He's like 6'2", 6'3". I stood beside him in person. Big dude, you know, and I'm 6 foot, you know, 6'1" myself, and he was like at least 2 inches above me. And so, freak athlete. I do think he has some issues tackling, but he's a great cover guy. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina, you know, went after him. Demetrius Knight from the same team. I think we need a good linebacker. He'd be great. Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, another linebacker prospect I would love to get. Nick Scarlton, Braden Swenson, Prince. I can't even say his name. Ualina. I don't know what his name is out of Ole Miss. I just say Prince U. All edge prospects that I think would be great on day 2. And so there are more guys than the ones I mentioned, but those are the guys that's been my dogs. I've been kind of watching them along the way as I've been looking at these prospects. But that first crew, Ben Morrison, Xavier Watts, Makuba, Will Johnson, if he's healthy, and Eamon War, I would love any one of those guys.
JJ, how critical in your mind is that 10th pick in the 3rd round? I mean, when you get down to that level, you're talking about depth guys that you're not going to have starting, you know, and maybe one of them develops into something better than what you typically get out of a 3rd round draft pick. Do you think that you know, Dave Canales and that Dan Morgan are looking at a 3rd round guy like, we're going to need him to step up and play some significant snaps this year? Do they have to get that one right?
I think it's like super imperative for Dan Morgan to get that pick right and get it right to a point where we can actually get starter snaps out of our 3rd round pick. You know, if you look around the league, you know, everybody, you know, knows the 1st round guys, right? Like for the most part in college, they were household names. But when you look at the good teams and the good rosters that's deep in the playoffs every year, it's because like they have routinely got production out of their day 2 guys. So they're getting production out of round 2 and round 3 guys who are starting and contributing on an every down basis. And so I think if Carolina want to get back to the time where, you know, we are being respected as one of the big boy teams in the league, we have to start getting production out of our day 2 picks, our round 3 picks. Like we have to start expecting our general management, you know, our front office, our personnel people to find gems, you know, in the 3rd round that we can play. And at some point, let's be real, man. I mean, and this is something that's been on my mind since last night and even before the draft started yesterday. Dan Morgan, you know, was a really good football player when he played for the Carolina Panthers. He was an awesome college football player, you know, at the University of Miami. You know, he's a stud linebacker. And if you've been around football, like all linebackers are kind of wired the same. You know, like I kind of say the same thing that I say about military branches. Like I was an Air Force guy, you know, but when you run into the Marines, like all Marines are kind of wired the same, right? You know, so in football, linebackers are all wired to like seek and destroy. And it's interesting to me that Dan Morgan hasn't had that pick that really defines his attitude toward football yet. You know, like that real nasty, you know, I don't care if it's an edge guy, you know, a linebacker, a defensive tackle, a defensive back. Like you have to like go after the guy that like really is the person who embodies your persona. As a player, in my mind, I think that's what makes him attractive as a GM. I think that's what made John Lynch attractive as a GM when he went to San Francisco. You know, like I think if you're a former player turned personnel guy, like I expect you to draft a guy in your image. And so I want us to start, you know, drafting guys like that. And, you know, hopefully it could be a guy in the 3rd round tonight. I mean, somebody's going to slide. And I think it's on us to start expecting our guys to start taking chances on the guys that have starting potential. There may be a little, you know, situation that's causing them to slide a bit, but I think that's how you end up finding guys like that. You know, like you have to take chances on them. Not if they have some crazy, you know, like, personal, story that's like, you know, that's been leaked about, you know, their character or something like that. But I think if they have the ability to produce, if they got the stuff on film that you like, and they happen to slide into your hands in the third round, like, don't look at me, look at the best player and just take that guy. Don't pass him up. And I think if they do it that way, they'll find a starting caliber person.
JJ, last question here for you. How many wins do the Carolina Panthers get this year? I mean, they had that slow creep up from 2 to 5. I mean, I'm not certainly saying a winning season this year really feels like it's in the cards, especially with the defense still having a lot of big-time question marks on it. I don't know that I trust Bryce Young with a second-year Xavier Legette and a first-year Tet McMillan to go out there and, put up 28 points a game to have to outscore everybody on this schedule. But, would you be surprised with or would you be satisfied with that slow creep up to maybe 6 or 7 wins being, in my mind, roughly the ceiling for this team?
Satisfied? No. Right? Is it realistic? Probably, to creep up to like 7 wins this year. Satisfied? I think it's time to start expecting better, right? And I've been optimistic. It's hard for me I'm not a loser in real life, and I'm very competitive. It's hard for me to just go into the season thinking we're going to be a losing team, even if it looks that way. So I'm a bit delusional in that way. We won 5 games in 2024, right?
Yep.
And so I believe that the slow creep would say, 7 wins. But I think if we get the version of Bryce that ended 2024, if we start the season with that version of Bryce, with the confidence, with, the full support of the organization, they went out and drafted a guy that he stood on the table for. I think he has to come in as a much more confident young man than he entered 2024 as. So given he starts this year confidently, given that we address, some of the defensive front already, and we added, some linebacker help with Rose Boom. I don't know how much that means yet, but if we can add, I'll put it like this, if we can add 2 starting caliber defenders, via the draft and the remaining free agency, I'm going to put us at 10 wins. 10 and 7. Just because I'm tired of expecting less. Like, they're making big moves in the front office, like going out and getting Bryce a wide receiver to really show their support of him and their confidence in him. If you're doing things like that and you're ignoring, the fact that you had the worst defense in history in terms of points allowed last season, then that tells me that you're confident enough about what you've done in free agency so far, and that you feel, that the best thing to do is go in and get Bryce what he needs to elevate his game, and those 2 things together is a recipe for winning. So I want to hold the front office, I want to hold ownership to deliver. And so I'm going to say 10 wins is what I expect. And I don't know, I think the entire division, got a little better. I don't think they got any worse. I think the Bucks is still the team to prove that you can beat. And then it's the Falcons. And then, I think, we're about neck and neck with the Saints. And I think we have to prove, that we deserve to be looked at as a better team than the Saints and the Falcons, and that, it's us and the Bucks, and that we're ready to take them out. But I think 10 wins, lets folks know that we're here and that we're to be respected. There's a lot of people high on the Panthers right now, and it's coming off the momentum of 2024. So 10 and 7 is my record expectation if we can nail down 2 starters in the draft and the remaining portions of free agency. A lot of things are going to shake loose, with people adding, rookies to their roster. Some guys are going to be cut. Some guys are going to be cut through camp. I think we can pick up another, couple of guys that we can plug and play at defensive back and potentially at linebacker between now and September. So if we do what we need to do and fortify the rest of the holes in the defense, I'm going to say 10 and 7.
Well, if the answer is stop the Bucks, that's going to be tough. Going to have to add another safety, cornerback, somebody that can shut down Emeka Egbuka. That guy's coming to the division, and that's a scary thing for a defense that gives up a lot of points, especially since the conversation Goodell said that they were looking at going to 18 games. So there's always going to be another team that could put up even a worse defense. JJ Hardy, Panthers Culture podcast. Make sure you look him up. He's absolutely fantastic. Love your work, JJ. Love having you on the station. Love having you on the show. And, of course, as we get deeper and deeper into this offseason and closer to the regular season, we'd love to bring you back on.
No, man. Hey, look, I appreciate you reaching out, Diesel, and, appreciate being back on the show. That's the home front for me, so being able to talk to my people, back in the upstate, is a beautiful thing for me. And so I missed it. And glad to be back and looking forward to reconnecting as the season goes on.
Appreciate you, JJ. That is JJ Hardy of Panthers Culture at Panthers Culture on Twitter. He is fantastic. Look up his work. We were in the last segment talking about the audio that was coming out of day one of the NFL draft. Let's get back to that. Some live radio, doing a little shuffling of the deck chairs as guests were available to come on. Let's get to Booger McFarland. Now, this may be my favorite piece of audio for the entire segment here. Booger McFarland explaining why he would have taken Shedeur Sanders over Cam Ward. Now, Madcraft, don't let this trigger you. The pick is already in. It can't hurt you anymore, but this is Booger McFarland talking that nonsense on Shedeur.
If it was your team, who would you select? For me, it would be Shedeur Sanders. And we become enamored so much by the wild plays, so much by the off-platform throws for Greeny. We don't take the simple. We don't like the simple sport. And look at what Shedeur Sanders does. He plays the football like an old school position, the quarterback spot. He stands back there in the pocket, and he throws the football with accuracy. And it may not be the most special thing you've seen, but it's the prerequisite for the position. Completing the football with accuracy, with timing, great decision, poise. He does all the things that you need to do quarterbacks to do. All right, so the pick is in, and again, we expect.
Really liked Shedeur Sanders for the number one overall pick, said Booger McFarland. That would have been a big old mistake, but we'll see. I mean, Shedeur could develop into a solid quarterback in the NFL. The teams. When all 32 teams, and granted not all 32 teams needed quarterback, when they all say no thanks, not in the first round, when a lot of people pictured you as a first round guy, there's something there. There's something, a reason why guys didn't want you. And he was jumped by Jackson Dart, a guy that I was looking at yesterday as my sleeper pick for the second quarterback taken. I didn't put him in the challenge against Cole Bryson for 1 and 2 at each position group. I should have. I would have been right. Here is Brian Daboll after the Giants drafted Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart on how he felt about the pick.
In an ideal world, would you like him to just sort of sit and intern this year? I mean, you said you're fine with him sort of learning from them in the city?
Yeah, I'd say that'll play out. Russ will be our starter, and that's how it'll be once we get started here in the spring. And, look, the process of developing a quarterback is just that. So we're going to do everything we can to develop him and bring him along. And, we have some good quarterbacks in the room relative to play time, experience, some, medals on the wall, if you will. That have done a great job here these first 4 days. It's really early, phase one, but the two of those guys that we've added have added a lot of value already to the room in terms of leadership.
Yeah, and if Russ doesn't work out, by game number 6 or 7, the voices calling out for Jackson Dart to be the starter there in New York going to get really, really loud. Here's what it sounded like when the Carolina Panthers went wide receiver with Teteroa McMillan at number 8.
With the 8th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver, Arizona.
Not the pick that a lot of Carolina Panthers expected, but it's the pick they got, and I think it's going to be a really, really good one for the Carolina Panthers. And that'll do it for the audio from the first round. Still a lot of audio that I do want to play this one. Sorry, two more of these pieces of audio. This is audio of Travis Hunter during his press conference, his first interview after going number 1 overall, and then we'll follow it with Shedeur.
I'm also still trying to make sure I don't miss Shedeur, get his name called, because I want to be on the phone and I also want to talk to him. So I'm trying to hurry up as fast as I can.
Don't worry, you got time. Don't rush out of the interview so fast, Travis Hunter. You got time. Shedeur Sanders not taken off the board. This was Shedeur talking to his camp in his huge gathering of people who were around him, expecting him to go in the first round. When he didn't go, this is what he said to his people.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, anything possible, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
Ooh. No, he was not inside of a shower drain when he recorded that audio. Tried to do a little bit of audio magic to it to reduce some of that background noise that was in that clip. It always makes it sound just a little bit funny. When we come back, let's look over the best players still available here in the second round of the draft. It's going to commence at 8 o'clock this evening. That's coming up next. Will Shedeur Sanders go in the second round, or will he have to wait until the second half of the evening? Well, that remains to be seen. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We just had a message in on the stream from Wrestling is Awesome. The Sanders saga reminds me of the time Vince McMahon. I'm done. I'm not reading the rest. I'm not reading the rest of that. You can't make me. But this Sanders saga is exactly that. It is intriguing. It is a saga. I'm looking at some mock drafts right now for the second round, and I don't see him going in the second. Now, wouldn't that be a massive blow to the ego if Shedeur doesn't end up going in the second round tonight? A couple of South Carolina Gamecocks. Again, everybody's mock draft is going to look a little bit different. A couple of South Carolina Gamecocks on the board for this evening. Of course, you got Nick Eamon-Warry as of right now, and I'm using the NFL.com mock right now. They are seeing Nick Eamon-Warry going 45 to the Indianapolis Colts. They're going to need a safety there. But, he's not super far away from maybe slipping to the Carolina Panthers, who have drafted an awful lot of South Carolina Gamecocks. People say that doesn't mean anything, but there's a chance that it does. I would love to see Donovan Ezeraku drop all the way to 57 as well. Get that edge position taken care of. But this, again, the NFL.com mock draft, they've got edge rusher Jordan Birch, a former South Carolina Gamecock, mocked to the Carolina Panthers at 57. Jordan Birch would help up front. He's not maybe the most elite pass rushing guy. Again, the elites may not fall all the way down to 57, but it would be fascinating to see if a guy like that falls to the Carolina Panthers. If you can get Ezeraku, go get him. Who knows? We'll see what goes down tonight in rounds 2 and rounds 3 of the NFL draft. Tolos, what's your prediction for the second and the third round of the NFL draft? How far does Shedeur Sanders fall? Will he fall all the way to the third round? You tell me. They've got the Cleveland Browns taking Shedeur with the 67th overall pick, again, to the Cleveland Browns. Think about that. Same team that was mocked early in this draft process, having him there in the first 5 picks with the number 2 overall pick. It was a little bit of a reach there, but falling all the way to the third round, still going to the same team. That would be fascinating to see if Shedeur Sanders falls all the way there to the early third round. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. For what it's worth, they also have the Carolina Panthers going corner, Jacob Parrish, Kansas State. You get this far down in the draft, it's really hard to know a lot about these guys. They weren't great players in college. They were good players in college. Who knows what they could end up being at the NFL level. When we come back, I'm going to take you back to the conversation that I had in the 3 o'clock hour with Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. We got into some college baseball. We got into, the story with the Arkansas athletic director giving essentially permission for the Edge NIL collective to go after athletes who walked with Arkansas Edge money. A great conversation I had with him. That's coming your way next.
in their last 3 series, including last weekend in Kentucky. You know, LSU won 2 of 3 against Alabama last weekend, but the weekend prior they got swept by Auburn. They just got run ruled in the midweek by Northwestern State. So they're not feeling great about where their team is at right now, right? Like, they're really antsy. And both of these teams fighting for a top 8 national seed. Pick any storyline you want, Diesel. It is going to be pure cinema this weekend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I just can't wait to take it all in firsthand.
And you know, every baseball coach in America wants those type of tough environments right now. You need to be tested like that down the stretch. Clemson hadn't really been tested that much over the past couple of weeks, and they, you know, took a 14-4 loss yesterday on the road at NC State, a good NC State, top 25 NC State team, but they need those kind of environments right now at this point in the season. Tell me about this seafood restaurant that you were at. It's called Paraines, I think. You know, how adventurous of an eater are you while you're out on the road? And I ask that because my co-host eats Chick-fil-A fries and Chick-fil-A sauce and calls it gourmet. He won't eat sushi, even if it's cooked. Please tell me you go outside of the deep fried section when you're tasting all these menus from all over SEC country.
Oh, Diesel, for sure, man. And we got to get, by the way, we got to get Cole right. That is a shame that a South Carolina man, because I'm just thinking about, listen, I was just down the week prior, Diesel, down in Hilton Head, had some soft shell crab and swordfish and, you know, all kinds of stuff. I love seafood, really a lover of all food. I mean, I would try anything nearly. So yeah, so it's Pyran's, and it's one of the best spots here in Baton Rouge. I mean, certainly the menu is as adventurous as you would like to get. Actually, when I was here with the football season, I had crawfish etouffee, which was one of the best things to ever hit my taste buds. Last night I had more of a just like a traditional seafood dish, if you will, but had boudin balls for the appetizer. Phenomenal. We are going to get, Diesel, I'm really excited about, you know, we're vlogging the whole weekend. Yes, I'm excited to, you know, to take in the baseball series, but one of the things I'm most excited for, I'm going to have my first boiled crawfish experience. If you can believe that or not, I've never actually had boiled crawfish. So, I mean, I've had crawfish. I had it in the crawfish etouffee, but I've never had it like the traditional boil it, crack it, suck the head, all that good stuff. Never done any of that. So I will be having my first experience either today or tomorrow. I know there's a big tailgate that a former LSU baseball player is throwing, and they will have boiled crawfish out there. So, yeah, really excited. Listen, I'm adventurous when it comes to the food. I'll try virtually anything. I can't think of many things that I won't at least give a shot. I love seafood. So I've been spoiled over the last few weeks being on the coast of South Carolina and now being down here in the bayou. So it's, I'll tell you this too, the food, because I've toured the SEC obviously to a great extent at this point, the food in Louisiana as a whole, Diesel, it's just undefeated.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, and they say down here, you're not fat, you're well fed, and the food isn't hot. It's just well seasoned. So yeah, it is, the food here is next level.
I have this theory, Chris, that the best food comes from the poorest areas, right? The people that had to take the leftovers that nobody else wanted and figure out a way to make it delicious. That's where the absolute best food comes from. It can't be topped because it takes the effort and it takes the love to coax all the flavor out of those things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, again, and by the way, I want to give a shout out that I remember now. The Pontchartrain is what I had last night. Incredible dish if you ever go to Pyran. But yeah, no, I would agree with you, Diesel. I mean, they get really creative with it. Like I said, the seasoning. I'll go as far as to say this. After I left Baton Rouge the last time, I bought a couple different seasonings that I now put on like everything when I'm making chicken, fish. I put it on my eggs. I mean, I'm fully bought into the culture down here when it comes to the food side of things. So yeah, I'm telling you, man, the food is undefeated.
Yeah, Chris, a Pontchartrain sounds like a 3-foot-long hot dog that would be for sale inside of LSU's football stadium, or that's opportunity missed. That sounds like a great name for one of those gigantic meals that you're only going to get in one location. Let's jump over to the football side of things, Chris. I want to get your reaction to Arkansas's athletic director backing their Edge NIL collective in pursuing buyouts from players. Like, I think in theory, it sounds like a great idea and it sounds like a win for college football. But if only 1 or 2 schools are doing this, starting to go after players that are leaving before their term is up, then won't it just be used against them in recruiting? Couldn't Lane Kiffin say, hey, don't go to Arkansas because their athletic director is going to come after you for money?
Diesel, I support Hunter Yurachek when it comes to the idea of buyouts in college football. There has to be some sort of protection for the universities, the head coaches, the schools themselves. And I think college football needed this Iamaleava situation to happen from the standpoint of it blowing up in Nico's face. There being some backlash of Madden just all of a sudden leaving Arkansas for UCLA. And I'm going to play devil's advocate for you here, Diesel, because you mentioned, could it be used against Arkansas in recruiting? Here's why I don't think so. I think if you could talk to these coaches behind closed doors and you had an open, honest conversation with them, they would tell you this is what they want. They want some sort of structure like this in place where, again, there is protection for them. Guys can't just up and leave and, take the money and run, what have you. So, and these are coaches that I've talked to, by the way, across multiple sports that have mentioned they have vented their frustrations over NIL and, what it's done to college athletics, what it's doing to their rosters. So, no, listen, I think it's a good thing for college football. We need more structure. It has been the wild, wild west for too long. We needed something radical to incur some change, and it feels like we've finally gotten that to a degree. I think the buyout thing, listen, it works in every other, situation, whether it's pro sports, it's these coaches, right? When they leave for a job, they got to pay a buyout. Diesel, I can tell you right now, there's already SEC schools that are fining kids. Fines have already been put in place. Money is being taken away from these athletes to a degree. You're right. There's probably going to be some litigation, some back and forth, some fighting, if you will, because, I don't think it'll happen easily. But, yeah, I'm all for what Hunter Yurachek's pushing for. And, again, I think the university, they need some protection of this. You can't just be handing out money and expect nothing in return, and guys can just leave freely. And, again, they can take the money and run. So I'm all for more structure in college football. I think it'll make the sport more likable, and I think fans will have more understanding of what is going on and not feel like they're just kind of, just riding the wave of the next guy entering the portal and taking the bag.
Yeah, Chris, I completely agree with you. I think it's necessary. And, I think this whole Nico Iamaleava story is the first real market correction in this NIL era. I just wonder how enforceable things like this are if each school gets to decide whether or not they want to enforce their buyouts, and it's not coming from the conference where every school is mandated / allowed to pursue getting money back from these guys. So back to that Nico story, and we've all talked about that till we're blue in the face. I just wonder from you, do you believe that Josh Heupel can turn Joey Aguilar into a starter for Tennessee this year? Does Joey Aguilar start a game at Tennessee?
I think he will start a game, Diesel. I think you brought him in to compete for that starting job, and I don't think you bring him in unless you feel like he can be your starter. What's unique, Diesel, you and I have a very unique vantage point because we've probably watched as much App State football as anybody else out there. If anybody can get the most out of Joey Aguilar and at least bring him to at minimum equal to the production Nico gave them last year, I think it is Josh Heupel. Very quarterback-friendly system, quarterback-friendly scheme. I think especially if Joey's able to get in there, grasp the offensive system. You and I both know, right? He's a gunslinger. He's a warrior out there. You never question his want to or toughness or leadership or what have you. But you and I also watched him, Diesel, and I thought he was an average Sun Belt quarterback. I did. I was at the game, and it's one game, right? I don't want to judge him completely off one game, but, I was at the game last year against South Alabama where he made some throws that just,
head scratchers.
Yeah. Awful throws. And again, that was one game. He's played great football, but I tell you this, the one thing he has to do is cut down on the turnovers. 14 interceptions, I believe it was last year, and that's against Sun Belt defenses. And all due respect to the level of football in the Sun Belt, this is the SEC. It is going to be a completely different beast now. So, listen, I think with his athleticism, I think with Josh Heupel and his offensive mind and what they do offensively is so unique. And from what I was told, Diesel, Nico Iamaleava actually struggled to grasp the offense as a whole, which is one of the reasons why he actually struggled. That's something behind the scenes nobody really knew about. I think if Joey can come in again, pick it up quickly, he'll have a chance at great success. But to say the least, Diesel, and I voiced this on social media, I mean, I was skeptical of the pickup. And again, I wish Joey went with the best put on for App State, but I don't know, man. I just, unless he makes a major leap, Diesel, like if he just is who he's been, who we've watched, I think he's a bottom third of the league quarterback in the SEC, and I don't even think that's a hot take.
Now, I wonder how much, knowing that he was losing his coaching staff as the Sean Clark era was coming to a really sad close at App State. I wonder how much of that kind of worked its way into his psyche and changed the way he played, because he's a guy who could play up to a scenario where there was that road game in 2023 at North Carolina where he was magical in the overtime scenarios, but he also stunk it up really bad against Clemson last year in a 66-20 loss. So he also stunk it up to schools like South Alabama. And if you fancy yourself a good program, a great program in your conference, you just can't let that happen. Chris, how did you take in the draft last night? You're on the road. You're in Baton Rouge. Were you in a hotel room? Were you watching it at the bar at your restaurant? How were you taking in the draft?
Yeah, so we had it on at the restaurant, Pyrans with TVs all over the place. So that was great. And then we also hopped to another place after that, and they had it on in Ivar's. Shout out to Ivar's, great bar down in Baton Rouge. So, yeah, I was able to watch it. I was funny enough, man. I was obviously being down here. I was with a few Saints fans, and they were less than pleased with their selection. Obviously, an offensive tackle, I believe it was, at the number 9 spot. But I don't know if I've mentioned this to you yet, Diesel, or maybe I'm sure many of your audience does not know, although we've publicized it, on our socials and everything else. SEC Unfiltered, yours truly will be relocating to Nashville, Tennessee, actually end of next month. Going to be making that move. So I was very intrigued by the Titans at number 1 selecting Cam Ward. So if you see me rocking a Cam Ward jersey over the next few months, mind your own business. No, I'm kidding. I was intrigued by Cam Ward going 1. Obviously, I think the big storyline of night number 1, no Shedeur Sanders in the first round. I know everybody's so devastated by that. Couple big time SEC guys. I was a little surprised that Nicky Manwari didn't go, for all the South Carolina folks out there, especially with the year he had last season. I mean, he was one of the best safeties in the league. I understood Malachi Starks going over him, but thought maybe Manwari would be a first round talent. A lot of big time SEC guys. I mean, I believe I saw the stat: 26 of the 32 selected in the first round, Diesel, were SEC and Big Ten players. So, I mean, it's no secret who runs college football. It's no secret where the best players go. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. So, yeah, I mean, going to be interesting. And also, too, by the way, with my buddies, LSU's Will Campbell. He went 4th overall, I believe, to the New England Patriots, I believe it was. So, Yeah, we had a fun night watching the draft and certainly kept an eye on it. It was a good time.
Chris, you are the absolute best. Appreciate your time each and every time. Congratulations on joining the Believe Network. I know that's going to, just continue to grow and blow up the SEC Unfiltered brand, man. Proud of you, proud of what you've achieved over these past 2 or 3 years since moving over from Spurs Up Show to SEC Unfiltered. It's a lot of fun covering the best teams in sports instead of being, tied to one program, win or lose, isn't it?
It is, Diesel, and I'll say on that note, hopefully the Gamecocks can get back up there soon. It's very interesting times on the diamond right now with Paul Maneri. We obviously haven't talked about him a ton this season just because of their struggles, but yeah, it is quite interesting times for the program. Hope to see him back up again soon.
That is Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, going to continue our round 1 of the NFL Draft breakdown on the other side with Ross Tucker, our Odyssey NFL insider.